Hello, this is Mad Cat, the angry egalitarian that discusses this and that. And today is another edition of Mad Cat Smash Feminism. 42. And as we know, 42 is the life, the universe, and everything. So that was my quip today. Anyways, I've got a special show today. Now, we are doing this early in the morning when I'm usually like, bleh. But I have a very special guest with me today. She goes by the name of Modern Medusa. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm fantastic. So, I recently met Modern Medusa. She commented on a channel that I was doing, and we just sort of became fast friends. And I think she has a big future when it comes to doing YouTube videos. Would you care to tell us a little bit about yourself to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been on YouTube since I was about 13, so quite a few years, and but just recently I decided that Gorgon's choking me a little bit. um, but recently I decided to start a new channel, just for specifically my opinion, stuff that I wanted to talk to other people about. Like egalitarianism, feminism, uh, atheism, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I only started a few days ago, so I'm very new. But I'm hoping to get to meet a lot of new people and discuss a lot of new things. So, but I'm trying to do a few different new series, I guess, about encounters I've had with feminists, radical, just regular radical kind of people about religion and ideals and all that stuff. And I'd also like to do some comedy sketches and, of course, implement my art into different things. And eventually, I'd like to do some animations as well.
So, since you mentioned the art, can you show us some of the art that you have back there? That looks pretty interesting.
I well, these are all paintings. Let's see. There's that one. Just some watercolor over there. It's abstract kind of stuff. Those are a little old. I've gotten into more realistic stuff recently, but I still like to do abstract stuff too.
So, your name is Modern Medusa. Now, if I remember correctly,
Mm-hmm.
Medusa was the villain of the story, and then her head got chopped off.
Oh yeah.
So, what does Modern Medusa mean to you?
Well, it took me a while to actually figure out the name. What I started with was just my name followed by the opinionated. And I was like, that's a little too strong. I'm just gonna go with something, that would, just create kind of a character. And I wanted to uh, play that character a little bit while also, implementing my own ideas. So I came up with Modern Medusa just because, first of all, I love snakes. I've got one around my neck right now. His name's Gorgon, which, Medusa and the Gorgons.
Really, I
So
thought that was just a
I was
choke
like, well, I
collar.
can. And, but yeah, so I thought, well, I'll try to do something a little different. I was like, well, what about Medusa's wrath or Medusa laughs or something like that, But I was like, you know what? Modern Medusa makes a lot more sense because I wouldn't actually be, like the character Medusa, but I'd be like a modern version, So yeah, that's kind of how I came up with it.
So, something that I like to ask a lot of females that I meet, because unfortunately, in this society today, it seems almost too easy for women to be mixed up in the feminist movement. It's almost like
Mm-hmm.
um, other feminists work very hard to get young girls into it. How is it that you aren't currently a feminist? Were you able to avoid it growing up, or is it something that recently you've come out of? And what is it about feminism that you don't like today?
Well, first of all, I was pretty much raised as a Christian conservative woman praiser, like not necessarily feminism, because I had never heard the term feminist until I was about I think 15 or 16. And but I was raised to think, women are paid less, women need to be protected, women should never be hit, women are more sensitive, so they have to be catered to. And that was just from not only my mom, the rest of my family, and also the schools, because a lot of curriculum is just not very pro male. You know what I mean? But yeah, so when I first started realizing what it actually was when I watched this movie, and I think it would be really funny for us and maybe some other people to do a review on it. It's called the Itty Bitty Titty Committee. And I think it was made in like
I'm already outraged.
2000.
Tiny tits.
But yeah, I think I watched it when I was uh, about 16 with this other girl that I knew. It's all about feminism, and I didn't know what it actually was. I watched it by myself first because I was like, I was just in that like deep Netflix phase where I was like only watching the gay and lesbian section for like hours upon end. So I was like, oh, itty bitty titty committee, that sounds interesting. So I showed it to this person. I had no idea what would happen, but apparently, like she was so nice. She was a really nice girl. She was God, we watched this movie, and she just went full blown feminist, like feminazi. And I was really confused because when I watched the movie, I watched it from like a perspective of like from the outside. I was like, okay, these are feminists. They want to, fight for women's rights. That's cool, because I thought women's rights were still a thing because Obama was saying that, But this was like around 2008 or 9. Uh, but yeah, so I we watched that movie. We ended up being in a play together, Susical, which is very painful. But pretty much she turned every girl against us, against me and the person that my best friend, who was not a men's rights activist, but everybody said he was, which isn't a bad thing, but so she spread around that he was sexist and I'm sexist, and then everybody started being rude to us, and we were like, what the fuck is going on? Like, is this like fucking just people pushing us out of a group because of an ideology? Like, it was very new to us, and we didn't know what was going on. So and one day we got in this huge debate about how feminism is for equality and men's rights are awful and not for equality. So I had to remove myself because I didn't have the I hadn't built up the confidence, I guess, to be able to talk to someone like that, and it scared me. And I was like, God, these people are really crazy, and I started looking it up. I started watching I started watching stuff about it and following pages on Facebook, and until pretty much I just learned all the narratives and all the things that were all the myths coming from feminazis. And that's pretty much what completely stirred me away from it and made me try to look into like, well, what are the facts? what are the actual facts? And I realized that, women aren't as, oppressed as they think they are, as certainly as not as much as I've been raised to know, because I mean, with the wage gap, like that pretty much was the entire, that was up until I was about 16. I was told that, and I believed it. And if it almost felt like a religion almost, because I believed in Christianity up until I was about 14, and I started realizing, oh, well, there's a little bit of inconsistency with the Bible and all that stuff. But yeah, so that's why I tried to remove from it, because I try to get away from any like really radical ideals that don't benefit everyone. So any kind of like one-sided thing, I don't try to be a part of at all.
No, I can certainly understand that, and that's why I push myself as being an egalitarian rather than being a men's rights activist. To be fair, though,
Yeah,
in order to achieve equality, we need to focus more on men right now than we do women, because there's a great inequality there. That's why I work with a lot of men's rights activists. But me personally, I think that we should all want to be egalitarian, wanting to have a true balance between the two. But I don't exactly fault those who want to be men's rights activists, because there's just a lot of work that needs to be done there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially like the honey badgers, like they are very, very intelligent women, and I would never, criticize them for being pro male, because it's, not necessarily pro male, but pro men's rights, because it's important, in America, at least in Western countries.
Yes, the honey badgers are very great. And I'm not saying that because I used to be one of them, although I could. All right. So thank you for that impromptu interview this morning. We actually do have an article to discuss today, so I invite you to join me for that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me go ahead and load it up. There we go. And there she is. And if you are joining us today, feel free to leave a comment into the chat, and we will try to read it on the air. But let's go ahead and start with our article today. Acting like a tough guy. Violent, sexist video games, identification with game characters, masculine beliefs, empathy for female violent victims. So this is a study that has recently come out in April 2016 that's talking about the link between masculine beliefs and violent video games. And there's a lot to go over on this. So, and as Modern Medusa was saying in the pre-show, there's a lot of laughing we have to do at Feminism today. So feel free, Medusa, if there's anything you want to say, just go ahead and say it right out.
Okay. Well, I did want to say that is the longest goddamn article title I've ever seen. It's like they try to fit everything in at once.
With research papers, because this really isn't an article so much as it's a research paper, that's actually pretty short. I've seen some pretty long ones. Bow wow. All right, so these are the individuals that are responsible for this study. Most of them originating out of Milano-Bicocca, I'm bad at Spanish, Italy, and University of Genova, Italy, or I guess it's Italian, but they're very close. And then also Ohio State University and the University of Amsterdam. So this kind of is a Western themed God, I can't even think of words today. Basically, the Western world is definitely behind this. Okay, so let us go ahead and start with the abstract. And we're not going to read this entire thing, but we'll be going through major parts of it. Empathy, putting oneself in another's shoes, has been described as the social glue that holds society together. This study investigates how exposure to sexist video games can decrease empathy for female violence victims. You okay over there?
I'm already laughing. It's just ridiculous.
Okay. Excuse me. We hypothesize, wow, they actually use the word correctly. Usually people use the word theory, but I'll give them credit. They use the proper word. We hypothesize that playing violent, sexist video games would increase endorsement of masculine beliefs, especially among participants who highly identify with dominant and aggressive male game characters. We also hypothesize that the endorsement of masculine beliefs would reduce empathy towards female violence victims. So I don't think that's really a hypothesis, though, because they're already having this belief that people who play violent video games have masculine beliefs. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But I mean, this is just, they already have an opinion of what it's going to be, and they're kind of starting backwards. They're starting with the conclusion and working backwards until they can find a hypothesis that already matches their pre-established conclusions, which is pretty much what every feminist study is.
Basically, yeah, absolutely. And speaking, as a female gamer, it kind of confuses me when they only focus on men who play video games, because me and my boyfriend, we both play video games. We both act the same. You know what I mean? Because whether he or I am playing Grand Theft Auto, like we both kill the prostitutes, we both slap them down, we both beat the shit out of men and women. So like mostly men, actually. Not. I'm really surprised that it got banned in whatever country it was. Was it
Australia?
Australia or something? Yeah. I was like, who sees the difference between a male and female gamer, other than the women who think that men are sexist, like in nature? It's ridiculous. And playing video games has made me. It definitely hasn't made me more violent. It maybe has made me laugh a lot, because like when you hit someone in a game, it's either hilarious or it's like, yeah, fuck yeah, I mean, it's not like, shit, yeah, I just fucking defiled this young woman, I'm gonna fucking rape her in game right now. Like, that doesn't happen. I don't understand.
Quick shout out to Dean Corwin, who says, "Hey-as, hey-as to you, Dean Corwin." All right, let's continue. Hey. Participants, 154, were randomly assigned to play a violent sexist game, a violent-only game, or a non-violent game. Now, one thing that I'm going to state right now is this randomly assigned to play a game, I don't think is what actually happened. Now, I don't have any proof of this. I only have an opinion of that, but when we go through this, I'm going to try to demonstrate why I don't think this was so random. After gameplay, measures of identification with the game characters, traditional masculine beliefs, empathy for female violence victims were assessed. Already, we can see some bias here. They're looking for masculine beliefs and empathy for female violence victims. What about the empathy for male violent victims?
Exactly. There's honestly no difference when you're in a game. Absolutely. Like online, in game, it doesn't matter if it's a woman. It's like it's a person you got to kill. You know, it's just another person that you have to slice in the neck and just go on to the next one. You know.
We found that participants' gender and their identification with the violent male video game character moderated the effects of the exposure to sexist violent video games on masculine beliefs. Our results supported the prediction that playing violent sexist video games increases masculine beliefs, which occurred for male but not female participants who were highly identified with the game character.
So they did have
Masculine
female
beliefs.
participants.
What's up?
They did have female participants then.
Yes, they did have female participants, but we'll find that they didn't really talk about the results of their female participants.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, masculine beliefs in turn negatively predict empathetic feelings for female violent victims. Overall, our study shows who is most affected by the exposure of sexist violent video games and why the effect occurs. Oh, I mean, if you've done your homework, then please educate me, you stupid morons. Because, no, I've already read this and I know what the results are going to be, but it's bad. All right, so this is going to be a little bit dry, so I'll try to make this as exciting as possible. Empathy is an emotional response that corresponds to the feelings of another person, such as feeling distress when seeing another person in distress. Well, I'm feeling distress reading this. Do you feel my pain?
Yeah.
Empathy doesn't make the...
It's like they're acting as if men are just born without empathy in their brains.
Well, no, that's not what they're doing. They're saying that they're born with empathy, but then it's violent, sexist video games that teach them not to be empathetic.
Yeah.
Empathy does indeed make the world a better place to live and is one of the best predictors of pro-social behavior. Okay, I can actually agree with that. Having empathy and mindfulness does make for better communication between individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Numerous studies have shown that playing violent video games reduces feeling of empathy and make people numb to the pain and suffering of others, which has actually been disproven time and time again. So right away, we see that they are biased to the researchers that support their conclusions and not looking at all the research that says that there is no correlation between sexist viewpoints and video games or violence and video games.
Yeah.
People feel empathy for other individuals, not for objects. In some video games, such as the very popular Grand Theft Auto games, female characters are treated as sex objects rather than as individual worthy of respect. Grand Theft Auto
Christ.
main male characters. I don't want you to focus on those words. Main male characters. Grand Theft Auto main male characters are always depicted as hypermasculine, dominant, and aggressive men. In contrast, the female characters are portrayed as sexual objects, usually prostitutes or pole dancers, who are peripheral to the game narrative and whose sole purpose is to entertain the main male characters.
I mean, if we were playing like My Little Pony Adventures, you know, there would be mostly female characters that aren't sexualized at all. But in, you know, a game called Grand Theft Auto, where how many Grand Theft Auto like women doing Grand Theft Auto? I mean, that would be cool if they had a female character, but how many women actually do that in real life? I'm sure it's, you know, mostly a male-dominated field, if you can call it that. But not only that, but, you know, the women, of course, they're prostitutes because the people that these men are around, they, you know, they go to strip clubs. They are in a very, San Andreas, that was a very, you know, I'm sure it was full of prostitutes. And, you know, there are also lots of regular civilians. I mean, I also don't understand how they can relate video game characters so much to people when they're not the main characters. And I'm sure, you know, all the prostitutes, none of them are main characters. So, I mean, that's pretty much my point. Oh, jeez. Sorry, sick.
Well,
But,
because of this, that's why Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to feature a Mormon character from Canada. Hey, I'm going to steal your car. Is that okay?
I'm about to shoot you in the face. Is that all right?
Oh, you're a female? Okay, I'm sorry. Here, have my wallet.
Yeah. Have my car. Have my clothes. Just take everything. You are obviously much more in need than I am.
Well,
being a female character.
The reason why I say focus on the words main male character is it's wanting you to only look at like, well, look at this character here. He's hyper masculine and blah, blah, blah. But then it's like, don't look at any of the other male characters, like the mechanic that you run over with your car after he fixed your vehicle. I don't really play Grand Theft Auto, but I know there are mechanics in it. You know, there are a lot of men that you end up shooting. And this is the thing about video games is that anywhere from 90 to 99% of the victims in video games that are killed are men. And yet there's no empathy towards that at all. No one gives a shit if a man dies in a video game. But if a single woman breaks a fingernail, oh my God, it's so sexist.
Basically. Even like slightly non-violent video games, like remember that, I don't remember what the video game was called, but the one that basically just had a girl facing backwards towards the cover, you know, like or just her butt with the orange suit. I don't remember what it's called, but yeah, like just Portal? That. I'm sure that's not a violent or sexual game at all, but they still find something violent and sexual about it because it features a woman who shows her butt. Like it's not even a sexy butt. I don't understand.
So Dean Corwin writes to us, I play War Thunder, all tanks, no humans, and women also play. Nice. I went micked out because third wave feminists are poisoning men and destroying masculinity, and I've lost the empathy for women because of the lack of empathy from third wave feminists.
Oh yeah.
I haven't quite lost the empathy for women, but I do lose the empathy for feminists. I don't feel bad if well, I guess that's not fair to say of me. I feel bad for anything bad that happens to anyone. Whether they deserve my empathy or not, but you know, if women are crying, oh, we've been marginalized, I'm like, oh, it sucks to be you, doesn't it? Because I don't have any empathy for that, because if anything, our world takes out more stock in what happens to a woman than it does for a man. And it's like, if you really want to talk about all the bad things that happen to you, you know, you need to at least consider all the things that are happening to people all over the world, not just you yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I could be over here like crying, you know, saying like, artists aren't represented enough, you know, artists' rights, but it's also like, well, okay, there are a lot more important things going on. So, you know, I don't really try to focus on just completely useless promotion when it doesn't really matter compared to other, you know, important issues.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and continue. For example, after paying a prostitute for sex, players can kill her and get their money back. Well, that's just economics right there.
I
Rather
mean, you
than
could do that
being
in real life
punished
too.
for what's up?
Oh, I just said you could do that in real life too if you wanted to.
Rather than being punished for such behaviors, players are often rewarded through extra points, extra health to their characters. So, what happens when you kill a man? Are you then actually punished for it? And you're not punished when you
Yeah.
only kill women?
Yep.
Or is it the
Yeah.
same that men and women are treated the exact same in Grand Theft Auto, and you're just angry because it's just women that you don't want to be victims?
Exactly. They don't even. I don't. They don't even mention the male characters in here at all. I'm guessing.
No, they don't. Although sex-typed video game characters in the virtual world might affect perceptions of men and women in the real world, there is a dearth of research on the topic. In one study, male college students who saw photos of sex-type male and female video game characters versus professional men and women were more tolerant of sexual harassment against a female college student by a male professor. And I haven't looked up these individual studies, and I don't really feel like it, but in another study, female college student who immortalized sexual video game characters versus non-sexual video game characters were more likely to view themselves as sexual objects, which in turn increased their acceptance of rape myths. Medusa, do you
What?
see yourself as a sexual object and in turn believe in the rape myth?
Yeah, I don't really understand that. I've never looked at a sexy woman and thought, God, I am a piece of shit. I am just all I am is just a fucking a body to fuck. You know, like I mean, the only time I might think that is when the fucking the slut walks. Let's all be sluts, you know? I mean, that's, you know, just a random comparison, but
Well, what this is saying is that women see themselves as for the pleasure of men only, as sexual objects. And the whole rape myths, I think it's referring to basically that rape is not that common of a thing, or whatever they're trying to say, that, you know,
uh,
basically it's that.
what?
In a
So
third
basically, increase their acceptance of rape facts.
Well, again, I haven't looked at the study, so I don't really know what they're going
Yeah.
for in that. But in the third study, both male and female participants were more aggressive after playing a violent game as male characters than as a female character. Yet none of these studies assess the role of individual differences, i.e., moderators or
Yeah.
underlying mechanism, mediators, of the obtained effects. The present research fills these important gaps in the literature by testing moderator variables, identification with violent sexist video game characters and gender, and a mediator variable, masculine beliefs, of the effect of exposure to violent sexist video games on empathy for female violence victims. Well, I can't wait to read what you have to fill in this gap of what actually happens when people play violent sexist video games and identify with the character. Dean Corwin, I'm sure they will quote a lot of feminist gender study research who already believe men are bad and women are all good. More than likely. They pretty much have in
Yeah.
this. Who is the most affected? The moderating role of identification with the game character. Previous research has largely ignored moderators of the effect of violent, sexist video game characters on players. The notion of identification with the visual avatar as an online self-representation has been investigated in past research. In particular, some works have shown that when experiencing a virtual world, players are likely to establish a connection between themselves and their game characters and even imagine themselves to be that character. Okay, that's certainly a possibility. For example, participants in one study played either a first-person shooter war game or a racing game and then completed a measure of automatic attitudes using the implicit association test. The researchers found that participants who played a war game had stronger association between military-related concepts and the self, whereas participants who played a racing games had stronger association between racing-related concepts and the self. Okay, that makes perfect sense. If you're going to play a military shooter, you'll have more identification to the military after playing the game.
Yeah. Can I just say something though?
Sure.
I think it's funny because, you know, when I play a video game, you know, it's possible that I could get attached to the character that I'm playing, but oftentimes when I am playing a first person game, I identify with the other, not, you know, not the NPCs, but the ones who are really in depth, as in like Portal, you can't see yourself, but you can see GLaDOS and Wheatley, and they were some of my favorite characters. And so that what was I gonna say? That kind of plays into like if hang on, I forgot where we were at. Oh yeah, and I was gonna say like after I play a video game, yeah, I might feel a little like I'm immersed in the video game, but that also, you know, happens to like other media things. Like when I watch a movie, if I go see like Star Wars and I come out, I'm like, fuck yeah, I feel, you know, powerful because Star Wars. But that wears off after like a few hours. And I don't really see how, you know, these things, you know, there might be some like little things, you know, like the military thing. If someone plays a lot of military games, they're like, oh, maybe I want to go in the military. But like the really small things that they're talking about, like the, you know, fucking sexism and violence against women, I don't think people are really focusing on that at all. You know, like I said before, it's just, you know, trying to get to the next point, killing the next people, and I just don't really see the sexism that they're trying to play in here.
Well, I mean, my guilty pleasure is the video game that came out recently, Whack a Prostitute. I mean, you just go around whacking prostitutes all day long. Well, the thing that they
awesome.
don't take into consideration with these things also is that anyone who might be affected by, well, anyone who might be playing the video games for these reasons might be that they already have this mentality and that they are drawn to these type of games already, which has been suggested with violent video games. It's like, well, all of these violent people who've done all of these violent acts have played video games. That must mean that violent video games changes people. And it's like, not necessarily, because I play violent video games and, you know, I've only picked up a gun once in my life at a shooting range. I haven't done it since then. And it's just entirely possible that these people played violent video games because they were already violent people and they liked it.
Exactly.
You know, but no, they're trying to find something that caused people to be like that rather than like they had a presupposition, wherever that word is, to that kind of thought and activity. And none of this really takes that into consideration. No, they're trying to find what's actually causing the link so they can get more money into this narrative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so where were we? The results suggest an automatic shift in players' implicit self-perceptions. Identification with violent video game characters can also influence behavior. For example, one study found that boys identified with violent game characters, the more aggressive they were after the game was turned off. And that's certainly a possibility that, yeah, you know, I play a wrestling game and I just really want to go into the squared circle and do a pile driver to whoever's in the ring with me. I'm like, yeah, I'm being influenced by that, but an hour later, I'm perfectly fine. So if there's any causality, it's quickly dismissed. It quickly goes away the longer I'm away from it.
Yeah, yeah. And I imagine if I want to see a study where they play like Barbie games and that's it. And then see how many of the girls want to go be a fashion designer, how many want to go be a fucking doctor or something. Like, it influences everyone a little bit, maybe, if they're susceptible to that. But, not everyone. All the boys would be like, God, fucking, this sucks. They'd probably have the opinion like, God, I fucking hate girl games. And then they'd be like, oh, that's sexist, like, whatever makes females a victim.
Building on these previous findings in the present work, we tested whether the identification with the game characters would interact with exposure to violent sexist game in predicting a reduction in empathetic feelings towards female violence victims. More specifically, we expected players who highly identified with violent sexist game characters would display a greater endorsement of masculine beliefs. Furthermore, we expected that the interactive effects of exposure to violent sexist games and identification with the game character on masculine beliefs would be stronger for male compared to female players. Drawing from this theoretical framework, we proposed that identification with the game character and participants' gender could play a key moderating role in the effects of violent games on empathy for female violence victims.
This is just a bunch of bullshit.
It is, yeah. So what is it that they really mean by masculine beliefs? Previous research has largely ignored mediators of the effects of violent sexist video games on players. One scholar notes that the video game culture assumes that the default player is male, which can lead to a maintenance of masculinity in the virtual world. Well, and to be fair, that is the case. It is presumed that the main character that you're playing is male because more often than not, it is male. And it's also because the majority of people playing video games are male.
Exactly.
So why not assume that their own gender is the one playing the game? Now, the thing is that people still play video games that feature a female protagonist. I mean, the Lara Croft series has been popular even amongst men. Men still play the Lara Croft games. Now, they're not playing it just because of the gender of the main character, but because the gameplay is engaging enough that they want to play the game.
Oh, it's just because of that pixelated booty. That's all they want.
Pixelated booty. Sorry, it's been a while for me. I'll take it pixelated or not. Masculinity refers to... Oh, wait. Another scholar proposed that adolescent and young adult males often use video game spaces to explore their masculine identity. No, they don't. We have football for that. Masculinity refers to normative beliefs about how men are expected to think, feel, and behave. Oh, and what's it called when feminists do the exact same thing for men and women? Normal? Traditionally, men are considered to be aggressive, dominant, competitive, strong, powerful, and independent. Oh my God, God forbid, independent? We don't want men to be independent anymore?
Nope, not allowed.
I mean, and you know what? This isn't just like a social construct. This is evolution we're talking about. Men had to be aggressive. They had to be dominant. They have to be competitive with one another just to get the ire of a female to even look at them. you know. And if they
Yeah.
are not these traits, then it's very difficult for a woman to, and I'm a prime example of this. I'm 35 and never been close to being married. I don't really get females to look my direction because, you know, I'm not a very, I am dominant, but I'm not very aggressive. I'm not strong. I'm not powerful. I'm just a really smart guy with a sharp wit. But,
Hmm.
you know, if anything, these traits that we see in men are because of women. And if women were more
Oh yeah.
accepting of what it meant to have a mate, then I would almost guarantee you that within a couple of generations, these traits that you don't like would subside, that they would decrease. Because if there wasn't such an active competition to get the love of a woman, then men wouldn't need to compete with each other. And this is what happens in the MGTOW movement, is that men really, if you take away the desire of women, there's no need for competition. Men can actually be friends with each other without having to stab each other in the back just to try to get the attention of a woman.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's funny too that that excuse me, I forgot. uh I'll think of it in a little while.
Well, responding to what Dean Corwin says, that they're already starting a conclusion and trying to find evidence to prove what they already believe. Yeah, that's exactly what this is. But
Absolutely.
let's show how they did that, because the truth is in the pudding, or whatever that saying is.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that those traits are desirable by women anyway, so I don't see why they would be suppressing them or encouraging them. I don't know. It's a strange cycle.
It's because they believe that all of the problems in the world are because men have traits like this. So if
Yeah.
we took away these traits, then all the problems in the world would be resolved. Except for the fact, as you say, women desire these traits. They want their men to be aggressive, dominant, competitive, strong, powerful, and independent. They want to give themselves to that. But more than that, they want a man who is successful, highly successful. You know, there was a study that I did did a video on not too long ago. I think it was like on Tinder or something, that they showed that women, like the majority of women, prefer men who make more money than them. And if women are already successful, they want a man who's even more successful than them. And that they will not go on a second date with a man who makes less money than they do. But the majority of men actually don't care how much a woman makes.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never cared about that, and I don't really understand women who do.
It's because women want a simpler life, and if they have a man who's
Yeah.
more successful than they are, then they can control the money, then that's just more money they get to play around with.
Yeah. I guess I'm not really a greedy person.
Well, you are a starving artist, so I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm a starving writer, so we're perfect for each other.
Mm-hmm.
As friends, only as friends. All you people out there, I know what you are thinking. No. Anyways, theories of I can't ever say that word. Theories of masculinity assert the modern media conveys myth about the male dominance and female submission in order to support a patriarchal social structure. In other words, media stereotypes constructs a stylized views of masculinity and femininity that influence the thoughts and feelings and behaviors of those who consume these media. Because God forbid that we ever actually see that men are dominant and women are submissive anywhere in the world. God forbid that actually is noted and seen. But because video games display that that means video games is what's causing these people to have these behaviors, even though the entire span of human history has demonstrated this long before we ever had video games. Hell, long before we had fucking guns, we've seen this mentality. But no, video games are the cause of it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the mediated world, men are expected to control their feelings in order to be less vulnerable and more powerful. No, that's real life. Men are expected to control their feelings because no woman wants to be around a whiny man, a man who actually shows his emotion. And hell, Z actually proved this when he was pretended to be a feminist on Reddit. It's saying, hey, shouldn't we help this man that has such a negative view of women? And all the feminists were like, why? He's already a misogynist. Why should we try to help him? Oh, he's expressing his emotions? Well, he's just a crybaby. And let's not forget the feminist tears mugs.
Oh, yeah. I find it hilarious that they...
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I find it hilarious that they think that being less vulnerable would actually make you more powerful, because, I mean, I guess, yeah, if you had less empathy and you were more of an asshole, then you'd get to the top like Donald Trump, you know, but, like, as if that is a thing, like, they're acting like it's a cause of the patriarchy. Like, men have to be this way because men make themselves this way, and it makes no fucking sense.
However, not all emotions are prohibited. Feelings of anger and rage are encouraged in real men because they're associated with high status and power. And you know who's encouraging real men? It's women.
Yeah. Like, honestly, typical women I see all the time, like, sharing fucking macho cowboys or, like, big hairy men, and they're like, God, that's a real man. And I'm like, that's scary. Like, you know, I don't, like, you know, to each their own, but they are definitely, you know, pushing the view, you know, be strong, be buff, be fucking, you know, be perfect. It's ridiculous.
The portrayal of men in media as socially powerful and physically violent reinforces assumptions about how men and boys should act in society, as well as how they should treat women and girls.
Jesus Christ.
Speaking about the video of Z, and I forget who the other person was, but it was a great video. You know, one of the things that they mentioned was a guy who said that he took a woman out on a date, and during their encounter, a man comes up to them and is like, hey, give me $20. And the man does it. He just gives him $20. And the woman afterwards is like, said to him on like a phone, it's like, yeah, I don't want to see you anymore. You're just not like what I thought you would be. You're not like really you're kind of weak in all of that. Because he just gave money to someone. He didn't even like mug him or anything. He's like, hey, give me $20. So he did. And the guy tweeted back or replied back to her. It's like, yeah, I was in Iraq. I served in the army for several years. And then all of a sudden, she wanted to be around him. He's like, screw you. You know, just because we don't always display this dominant behavior, women will think anyone who doesn't is weak, but he was probably doing the most responsible thing. I mean, he could have probably beaten the guy up, but he didn't need to. He was able to, I can't think of the word, but he was able to deal with the situation in a non-violent way, and the woman turned against him because of that.
Yeah.
So telling me
absolutely
assumptions of how men and boys acting in society for being socially powerful and physically violent is by women.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
if you're going to say that this mentality also reinforces the idea of how they should treat women and girls, then you still got to blame women for that, because these women want to
Mm-hmm.
be submissive. They want to be in control through kind of a passive aggressive way by letting the man believe
Yeah.
that he's in control.
Mm-hmm.
Because all these men end up doing is sacrificing their lives for a woman. They have to work long hours just for their women, for their wives and their children. And then if they're very
Mm-hmm.
lucky, they can make it to an old age still married, but there's a very good chance that she's going to divorce them for something younger.
Oh yeah. I just I also think it's funny how they act like the portrayal of men in the media isn't at all influenced by women. Like, the portrayal of women in the media is influenced by men and women, and so is the portrayal of men, because men don't want to see, like a scrawny guy on the cover of a video game, and neither do women, even though they probably wouldn't play, the more masculine games as often. But, both men and women completely, contribute to both of those. And, they act like the portrayal of men by these video games, that is what, causes them to do this. Like, what are you fucking talking about? Like, it's absolutely, it's just no sense to it at all.
Exposure to sex-type media characters can have real-world consequences. For example, one study found that television programs that depict women as sex objects increases the likelihood of sexual harassment. I seriously doubt that, but so basically, if women are treated like sex objects, then men are more likely to treat women as sex objects.
I would call that realism. Like, are we supposed to just censor all violence and sexual violence at all and act like it doesn't happen? Because that's not going to make it not happen.
Yeah, once again, these are things that have happened through the entire span of human history. And
Mm-hmm.
more than likely, these men are watching these TV shows because they already have a predisposition, there we go, towards this. And that if
Yeah.
you actually interviewed a lot of people, no. A meta-analytical review found that masculine beliefs were positively associated with aggression against women. In general, males are more likely than females to agree with the myth and belief supportive of violence against women, show less empathy for female violent victims, and consider violence against females to be a less serious problem. And how are they?
I wish they would give us some examples of these.
Well, they are giving us studies. That's what all of these numbers are, is reference to studies that they're actually doing. But here's my question is, how would these men feel about violence towards men?
Yeah.
Maybe they're just violent people and they don't care about gender. And hell, that makes them a little bit more egalitarian, that they don't care about men or women. They'll just beat up whoever. But I'm willing to bet that they were only asked questions about violence against women and not about violence against men.
Yeah, I'm sure the girls, if they were asked, if they played a military focused game and they were asked about, violence against men, they'd be like, oh yeah, men are disposable, men are things of war and they don't matter, I mean, like, if they specifically worded those questions to get answers out of them that they want, which I suspect is going on here, they would also sound bad.
And I mean, when we look back at history, we're talking, let's look at like the white feather thing that happened in the UK during World War I, pinning white feathers on men, saying these men are cowards for not dying in a war for us. And really what it was is that feminists were trying to put the pressure on men to do it so women didn't have to do it. It's better to call a man out as being a coward than to actually having to raise up arms yourself. I mean, that's one interpretation of it. I'm sure people will have many other interpretations, but I mean, these women were showing so little empathy for men, and that during this time, more men were dying for their country that didn't even have the right to vote. And yet the entire focus of feminism is, well, women didn't have the right to vote. Well, most people who died in World War I didn't have the right to vote.
Yeah.
And they were dying in some pretty gruesome ways, but let's go ahead and shame them for not willing to die for their country. And I know some pretty strong women out there, and I know that they would be willing to die for their country, but as a whole, women are not willing to die for their country.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go into war personally. I know none of my friends do, or female friends.
Well, hell, even many males don't want to do that. No one wants to. We all want to live. But I mean, we're willing to protect because, well, you know, that's what needs to happen, not because we want to be the protectors. It's just that someone has to do it. Might as well be us.
Yeah. And you know what? I remember a couple years ago, this person, me and my boyfriend were walking downtown, and this person came up to us and said, "You want to register to vote?" And we were like, "Sure, why not?" And it was like a little bit of a realization, like he was signing up to, you know, for this huge, you know, the draft, and I didn't have to. It was like, you know, it was very polar, and it was like, this isn't very equal at all. But it's also like, I don't believe anyone should have to require or be required to sign up for the draft to you know, be able to vote. But I think that personally it should be mostly volunteers, which I'm pretty sure it is right now.
It is. What you're referring to is selective service. And it's actually a little bit more serious than you stated because, yeah, you're basically signing up for if there's a draft, you can be drafted into service. But it's a little bit more serious than that, that if your boyfriend doesn't do that, he can actually go to jail for that. If he doesn't do it by 26. Now, I don't know of anyone who's ever gone to jail because of it, but because he can go to jail for that, he can lose his right to vote because criminals are not allowed to vote. But more than that, if he ever wanted to get a government job, he couldn't do it until he signed up. If he ever wanted to get student loans, he wouldn't be able to do that until he signed up for selective service. So it can really hinder a man's life if they don't sign up for that. Now, I signed up when I was 18, but you're right. Women are not held by this. Women can get a government job, don't have to sign up for selective service, can get student loans, same exact thing. And it's actually against the law for women to even sign up for selective service. I don't know if anything will happen to you, but they won't let you do it. You can't volunteer to sign up for selective service as a woman.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, what you experience is a very serious thing.
Absolutely.
So let's continue on. We propose that the exposure to violent and sexist video games could reinforce masculine beliefs, hamper the ability for players to feel empathy for female victim violence, because masculine norms are strongly reinforced in GTA video games. We propose that GTA gameplay will increase masculine beliefs. Okay, I'll say it, but Grand Theft Auto is not normal. This is not normal behavior. If all men acted like this, society would crumble overnight. We're talking about a game that allows you to pretty much kill anyone you want, and you can actually get away from the police, and that, you know, you could just do all these bad actions Grand Theft Auto is no way representation of how men actually act. And if you think it is, then you need to get your head examined.
Yeah. And one thing that I find interesting is that, there's a big hype about Grand Theft Auto and how it's so violent and sexist. And, have you ever played Saints Row 4? Because, you can be a man or a woman, which is interesting. And, you can customize your character. I made mine a sexy, girl that kind of looked like me. And I was just beating the fucking shit out of everyone, pedestrians. You weren't supposed to kill the pedestrians, but you did anyways, and you killed aliens. And that's not even like really compared to Grand Theft Auto at all. And it's quite different, but it's also like, well, you get to beat the shit out of everyone as a man or a woman. And I didn't really see a difference between either of them.
Masculine beliefs, in turn, are expected to be negatively related to empathy for female violence victims. So, let's see. Yeah, we do need to kind of read this part here, but I'll try to get through this quickly. The present study investigates short-term effects on playing violent sexist video games on empathy for female violence victims. So it at least admits that these are short-term effects, not long-term effects. We considered identification with the game characters as one possible moderator, expecting larger effects of game content for participants who strongly identified with hypermasculine violent male game characters in Grand Theft Auto. Further, we propose participants gender a second possible moderator, assuming the effects of the game content would be stronger for male participants than female participants. As a possible mediator, we propose that violent sexist video games reduce empathy for female violence victims by increasing masculine beliefs. Combining these hypotheses, kudos on using the word correctly, we propose a conditional process model. In this model, we predict that violent sexist video games will increase masculine beliefs, which in turn will be negatively related to the empathy for female victims, and among male participants who display higher levels of identification with the violent male game character. So it then goes on to say that they got 154 Italian high school volunteers between the ages
I thought this was young children.
No, this was high school students between the ages of 15 to 20. Now, 43% were male, which means the majority of the people taking this were female, even though they don't really report on the females themselves.
Yeah.
They did get parents' consent for this. So the parents were aware of this.
God.
However, they were not actually aware of what the study was for. And I think they stated it somewhere in here that it was on how to build a better video game and not a review of this being sexism. Now, even though they were dishonest about what they were doing, I can actually kind of see why they had to do that, because if people knew they were being tested for their sexist response, then it might have skewed the results.
Oh, yeah.
But we are talking about basically being lied to about what the game was about. And this was about building a better game.
I'm guessing if the parents were misled, then the kids were probably too.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so participants were told investigators were testing cognitive abilities in order to develop a new video game. So that's what it was. And would be distributed in the near future. After providing basic demographic information, age, nationality, gender, participants were randomly assigned to play a violent sexist video game, GTA, a violent video game only, Half-Life 1 and 2, and then a non-violent game, which was Dream Pinball 3D and Cube 2. And these...
I mean, they're gonna compare Grand Theft Auto to Pinball 3D. Like, there's not even any characters in that. I don't know what Cube is, but does that have any actual humans in it?
I don't know. But my main contention is comparing Grand Theft Auto to Half-Life 2, which I'll reveal in a moment why that bothers me.
I remember Half-Life. Yeah, I remember Half-Life. I don't know. I don't think it's even comparable.
No, it's not. But, you know, I think they chose it on purpose, and I'll state in the moment why I think that. Half-Life is a first-person shooter game where the player has the same visual perspective as the character. Oh, that would be the definition of first-person shooter. In both games used in the studies, players fight in a post-apocalyptic future. Although there is a feminist co-protagonist, Alex, who's only featured in the second game. She's not featured in the first Half-Life, and it's hard to really talk about a post-apocalyptic future for the first one, since most of the time you're under Black Mesa. In contrast, all female characters in Grand Theft Auto are portrayed in a sexual manner. By selecting video games that use different representation of women, it's possible to differentiate between sexual violence exposures. And that makes sense on why they used it for that purpose. However, both games still feature violence towards males.
Yeah.
And basically, the Pinball 3D and Cube 2, which is a first-person puzzler, just basically have to solve physics-based challenges. So basically, here's the procedure that went down. First, they were shown an introductory video for about 1 minute of the game. Then they spent the next 5 minutes playing a pre-selected area where they learned how to use the controls of the game, how to interact in the game. Then they would play for about 25 minutes, completing a specific type of mission in the game. And they tried to make it the same for pretty much everyone who was doing it. So for all 3 games, participants were asked to pursue a specific goal or mission. So for the violent sexist video games, the mission was to destroy a rival criminal gang. Both missions started in a private club and then moved to the streets. They would frequently be exposed to female prostitutes and lap dancers. Those are common elements in all 3 episodes of the GTA saga. For the violent-only games, players were asked to complete a mission whose goal was to destroy a group of enemies, likely all men. The game's action in Half-Life 1 and 2 takes place in the suburban area of the city. Not Half-Life 1, only Half-Life 2 does that. That really tells me that you didn't even use Half-Life 1. You're just saying you did. If you had any idea about Half-Life 1 was about you're underneath a complex. Sorry. I get past it. Then it moves to a few abandoned buildings. And then the other games was just to accumulate as many points as possible. So after that, they were then asked to identify what game they were playing. Then also asked to give it a violence rating and how sexualized female figures were in the game. Then they were asked a series of questions after that. Like, I guess they used about 6 different questions. When I'm playing it, I feel as if I am my character. My character is an extension of myself. And this is where I start having a problem. Now, take Grand Theft Auto and Half-Life. 1 or 2, it doesn't matter. But yes, Grand Theft Auto, your character has dimension. He's a complex person. He has a voice actor. You know, there are you can actually learn a lot about your character. In Half-Life, your character never speaks. In fact,
Yeah.
all the other characters around you are speaking for you. Oh, what do you think about this, Gordon Freeman? Oh, I agree. We should do that. Even though you've said nothing, you don't even get a little prompt of what your character says like you do in the Fallout games. Because in those situations, your character's not speaking, but you can choose what prompts they end up saying to the characters. You don't get that in the Half-Life series at all.
Yeah.
So no one is going to identify with Gordon Freeman because he's not an identifiable character. He is just an object being moved around. He could be a companion cube, and that's it, and you'd still have the exact same gameplay.
Yeah, exactly.
A character who cannot be identified with in any way possible with a character that can be identified with, and it's like, see, people identify with this character, so it means that they believe in hyper-masculine viewpoints and not this one where it's just a violent game.
Yeah. It's hilarious. I often feel like, I wouldn't say I feel like it's me because I don't really, pretend that it's me, but, if it's a character like that, where you don't get to see their face, you don't get to hear their voice, you're like, all right, this is my character, I'm me. That's my personal experience.
Yeah, I mean, if you really wanted to compare games together, compare, Mass Effect to Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
But then again, you could also identify that as being sexist since you do get to romance your characters, or even compare the Fallout series to Grand Theft Auto. But then again, you can actually technically kill females in that one, but there are no prostitutes or pole dancers, at least in Fallout 3. Unless you turn the nude mod on, which I did. I think the world looks a better place when there's boobies everywhere. I'm just saying.
Absolutely. That's why I support Free the Nipple.
As a possible mediator, we measured masculine beliefs. We used 12 items. Boys should be encouraged to find a means of demonstrating their physical prowess. It is okay for a guy to use any and all means to convince a girl to have sex. So basically, they were asked these questions, and then they used this as an indication of how masculine their beliefs were after playing a video game. Now, here's a problem that's not very apparent. They asked these questions after playing the video game. Not before, after. Which means we don't know what their mindset was until after they played the video game. We don't know if they already possessed this mindset to create the result that they wanted. And this is why I believe that they purposely chose which students would play what games, because they wanted to get the result that they did, because we don't know what their viewpoints were beforehand.
Absolutely.
So you choose all the problem kids that are hyper masculine to play the game, and then give them the questions that you know will answer the way you want them to. That's what I think happened here. Now, I don't have any proof that this is what happened, but why not ask what their mindset was before playing the video game, and then find out how their mindset changed after playing the video game, which would actually demonstrate your point.
Exactly. I'm sure there would be a lot of very different answers if they had asked them, prior to doing that. And probably some similar answers, but also I think that convince a girl to have sex is a little bit leading into, some high school students might be like, I mean, yeah, if they're like, some girls might not be completely up for it, and then you gotta kind of coax them into it, but they are actually up for it. And so like I feel like some people might construe it as that situation and be like, yeah, I agree, or because that doesn't exactly sound like a sexual harassment, in my opinion. It sounds like they're trying to make it lead into that.
Well, the problem with this is that feminist theory states that rape is when a woman is coerced into sex. And then if like I came up to you and it's like, hey, you want to have sex? And you say no, and then I'm like, well, come on, it would be really fun. That right there is me harassing you. And that if you say yes to having sex with me after that, that is rape. Because I coerced you into having sex with me, even though you still gave consent. So this convince a girl to have sex is immediately seen as bad because someone persuaded them to say yes. And that a woman is not in control of her sexual autonomy at all. That's all this. That's what this is saying is, if a woman says yes to sex, she's technically being raped because she cannot give true consent.
Yeah.
I mean, and yeah, from a moral standpoint, yeah, it might be bad that, I keep badgering someone to have sex with me. But at the same time, it's still a person's choice to say yes or no. But feminists would try to convince one that, would try to say that that person felt pressured to say yes. So that's where they're getting with that. And yeah, it's actually kind of confusing because these children may not know this definition that they already have. And that trying to convince a girl to have sex with you, I mean, that could be just as much as like, buying her flowers, taking her out on a date, giving her a real good time in hopes that it will lead to sex and that you're putting more effort into the date so she'll be more receptive to that. But by feminist standards, that's still rape.
Don't think about the men convincing men though. Men never get convinced into sex ever.
No, because they always want to have sex. Every time a man says hello to you, he's really saying, "Do you want to see my penis?" Hello, Madam President. How are you doing? Want to see my penis?
I actually want to have sex with everyone I meet.
Hello there, sexy. The dependent variable was how much empathy participants felt towards female violent victims. And they became desensitized to violence. They became numb to the pain and suffering of violence victims of only females. You didn't measure how they were towards men. And I'm willing to bet they would have been the exact same to men as they were to women in your stupid little study.
Yeah.
Participants were shown one of two photos, randomly determined, of an adolescent girl who had been physically beaten by an adolescent boy. Participants rated what they felt: sympathetic, moved, compassion, tender, warm, soft-hearted, disregarded, or indifferent. About 2 weeks later, following the completion of the study, all participants were fully debriefed. No participant expressed suspicion about the true purpose of the study. In particular, none of the participants reported a link between video games and gender-based violence or sexism. The experimenters then disclosed the purpose of the study and discussed the potentially harmful short-term effects of violence and sexist video games on players. A group discussion followed. A group discussion. So even though these men played this violent, sexist video game, they didn't think there was a link. You told them, hey, there is. Now we're going to drill it into you that it is. So I'm going to jump around from this because it involves a lot of math that I don't fully understand. I don't really know how to read these studies, but so to increase the generalization of our findings, we use 2 different games of each type and 2 photos of interpersonal violence. Again, violence against women, not violence against men. So your conclusions were already biased right from the get-go. So then they combined the results together. There were no significant differences between the 2 photos of adolescent boys beating the adolescent girls on how much empathy participants felt for her. Which is very telling in of itself. So a lot of this is just the results that they were getting. Since playing violent video games that are not necessarily sexist have been already shown to reduce feelings of empathy, we contrast the co-ed video game as follows. Violent sexist is +1, violent only is 0, and non-violent is -1. And then participants' gender, 1 is male, 0 is female. So when we're seeing a positive number in these, closer to 0 is an indication that it was female response, and a negative number is nonviolent video games. But positive numbers were the things that they wanted to be. Again, I don't know this level of math, so I don't know if this is dishonest, but it kind of seems like it is. So it's just more math about this stuff. And I'm trying to jump down to like the more conclusion stuff that they had so we can kind of finish this video. Yeah, if someone can who understands this stuff could teach it to me, I'd greatly appreciate it, because I see a lot of it. I'm like, I don't know what this means. Okay, so the discussion and then the conclusion, and there's only like 3 more pages of this stuff, so thank you for anyone who's still watching after all this time. But it's very important stuff, because what we're seeing here is the mentality of a feminist and how they are justifying their beliefs in this study to make it sound official. And it's so much more telling of what they already believe.
Sorry.
It's all right. You got a snake on your hand, by the way. I don't know if you noticed.
Oh, shit. Fuck off, guys.
The present research in line with previous studies showing that violent video games can desensitize individuals to real-life violence, including violence against women. But we don't care about violence against men. That's perfectly fine. But violence against women, that's just like the ultimate bad. More important, it moves beyond the question of whether violent video games are harmful per se to address the important question of who is likely to be harmed by violent sexist video games, and through what mechanism does that harm occur. Okay, that actually doesn't answer that question, because you presume that the only victim who can be affected by this is women. You don't look at how men might be affected by this, so you can't even properly compare who's more likely to be a victim of violent sexist video games, because you only measured 1/2 of the equation. You can't say, well, all these people seem to be against female victims, so they're most likely going to be in comparison. It's like, comparison to what? Men? Did you test their reaction to men being violenced against? No, but it's just an assumption we can make. That's all they did.
Exactly.
A possible answer to the who question is players that identify with the violent sexist game characters. Yes, I'm sure people would be more likely to identify with Ray Liotta from Vice City. I know that wasn't his character's name, but that was the voice actor. Than Gordon Freeman, who says nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, people were more upset when the companion cube died in Portal than when Gordon Freeman got killed to death in like anytime he failed.
Oh man, that resonates with me because I felt that when that happened. I was like, ah, what? And that just shows how much someone can actually identify with something, whether it's an object or a person, and also showing how someone could not identify with something as like Chell, the character. You couldn't see, or well, I mean, you could see her through a mirror or a portal once or twice, but that was pretty much it. You had no idea who she was, and you were like in love with the companion cube, even though it was an object. So yeah. Great example.
Yeah, I'd always use the portals to look at her ass. I'm just a perv.
Yes.
But also,
There's
most
some
of the
good
reason
Rule
why you
34.
had any emotional attachment to the companion cube is because Gladys suggested that you do. And she gave you a huge guilt trip for it. Which is what makes Portal such an ingenious game.
Mm-hmm.
Results support the prediction that playing violent... we already read that part. Previous research has shown that video games are especially likely to increase aggression among players who identify with violent game characters, and that a reduced empathy is one of the major predictors for aggression against women. Exposure to media violence is one of the many factors that can influence empathy levels. You know what? Video games might influence empathy levels. I'll give you that, but I don't think it's the main driver. I think most people who commit violence against women are likely not people who are serious gamers. I'm sure you can find serious gamers who do commit violence against women, but there's a lot of other factors that go into it, such as social, economical. How much money do they make at their job? Are they unemployed? Did they come from a broken home? Were they themselves the victims of violence growing up by a female perpetrator? Did they have an abusive father? There is so many things that can go into what makes a person violent. Hell, it could even be genetics. But to say that it's only video games, that's where you've lost the argument. Now, you could say that it's an influence, but not the primary driver. But more than that, this also, once again, we don't care about male victims at all. And your entire test shows this. In fact, you might have even made the problem much worse because you're like, well, this is actually a gender study about the violence against women. And you've now told them that violence against men is perfectly okay, but violence against women is bad. And you have probably made the problem worse. Because you've demonstrated to these boys that it's okay to be violent against men, so long as it's not women.
Yeah, I think what they're doing is actually even furthering what they're trying to prevent, just by being like, oh well, like what you said, violence against men doesn't happen, and then men are going to continue to think that that's true, and they're going to become more desensitized and more not taking anybody's shit because nobody cares about them, and then you get violent people.
Exactly. And I think that this is actually something we're seeing with like the white knights out there that try to protect feminists. That if someone upsets a woman, then you got all these men coming forward. And I'm not going to say who, but very recently on Twitter, a woman, it's like, hey, everyone, go harass this person over here. Here's his phone number. Basically dox the person. And I tried to say to them, it's like, look, this is bad. You can't be doing this. Well, it's like, well, the person was an asshole to me. And I'm like, I don't care if the person's an asshole. You put their public information out there. You put their phone number and where they live, their city and state. And all of these other people, I would presume they were men, but I don't really know, came forward and it's like, oh, well, I'm going to set up an auto dialer to keep calling them. Oh, I'm going to order so many pizzas to go to their house. And you could say that that is just a minor thing, but what about the person who doesn't say anything that decides to do something? Someone who's like, oh, you hurt this female, I'm going to hurt you. And this person told me that the reason why she was doing this was because he was an asshole. And it's amazing how many men were coming in to defend her, that it's perfectly okay to harass a man because he was an asshole to a woman. It's perfectly okay to put his public information out there just because he was an asshole to a woman. And this is the behavior that we're seeing. And this study actually perpetuates that it's okay to be violent to men, but it's not okay to be violent to women. Now, we've kind of always had this mentality, but it's getting a lot worse. And the white knight movement out there, that's all it is.
Absolutely. Where are you going?
So let's go ahead and bring this to a close. I don't think there's anything more that this can say that we haven't already discussed. There is one thing it does mention, though, is the limitation in future research. They acknowledge that there was a limitation. First, they use self-reported measures of empathy, which is always and I always, when people use self-reporting method, it's like, well, see, this is proof that, women are more empathetic because they said they were more empathetic. Well, what people think about themselves and what they actually are two different things. Second, they only use 2 moderators, participants' gender, identification with the game characters, and only 1 mediator, masculine beliefs. And that they should.
I want to know what these beliefs are.
Well, we kind of mentioned them earlier, but basically, men should coerce women into sex, or men should find aggressive activities. Those were 2 examples, but they apparently went through 12 of them. They should use trait, aggressiveness, social dominance, orientation, dehumanization, and women objectification, but nothing about men's objectification. So, yeah, this is like... So their final conclusion, I'll read this real quick and then we'll close this. One of the best predictors of aggression against girls and women is a lack of empathy. The present research shows that violent video games such as Grand Theft Auto reduces empathy for female violence victims, at least in the short term. At least after they play the video games and we ask them. We don't know what they were beforehand. This reduction in empathy partly occurs because violent video games such as Grand Theft Auto increases masculine beliefs, such as beliefs that real men are tough, dominant, and aggressive. And I'm sure that the other men you kill in that game are also tough, dominant, and aggressive. Our effects were especially pronounced among male participants who strongly identified with misogynistic game characters. Daniel Pink was correct in noting that empathy makes the world a better place. Unfortunately, it appears that Grand Theft Auto might make the world a worse place for females.
I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it.
So, do you have any final thoughts you want to say on this subject?
Well, I actually feel like this study isn't even complete, like, at all, because they left out so much And like just in the comparison that they didn't ask them how they felt beforehand, it just sounds like a lot of misinformation that should have a lot more factors, kind of like the wage gap.
Well, and that's also very true. I'm going to keep it on you for right now. That is a very true point, that this is only really half the information. But what upsets me is that a university signed off on this. I mean, it's not like they just kind of did this random and the university's like, here's a bunch of money to do whatever. They had to get it approved and saw what they were doing. It's like, yeah, this is perfectly fine. And this kind of supports the idea that academia is being controlled by feminism. And it's like, oh, yeah, this will definitely say what we want it to. It's no longer the pursuit of truth. It's the pursuit of supporting the narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so, their narrative, it continues to go on. And I don't really, like you said, I don't understand how, like, a university just, said, yeah, this will be a good thing. Because, I mean, I'm sure that they can't, I'm sure if they didn't allow them to, that there would be a little bit of an outrage, like, well, you don't think that there's any sexism against women in video games? Well, I'm just gonna, do this and make you look like a piece of shit, and I can't prove that, but I'm guessing that if a lot of universities are just like, yeah, go ahead, just go ahead.
Well, actually, I saw something very similar to this on Twitter, where someone was commenting on something about Gamergate, and another Twitter person is like, you support Gamergate? The first person's like, oh, yeah, I do. So the second person's like, oh, so you support violence against women, and you support, the harassment of women. And he's like, no, I don't support any of that, nor does anyone in Gamergate support that. But it does seem that the opposition does support giving bomb threats. Do you support bomb threats? And then gave examples of articles where, public Gamergate events had bomb threats. And the person's like, of course I don't support that, you idiot. And I responded, it's like, so you want him to assume that you don't support that, but you're perfectly okay to assume that he does support that.
Yeah.
And that's just really the mentality, and especially in academia. If you don't think like we do, you must believe the exact opposite of what we think.
Yeah, and earlier when I was talking about that one feminist who that I accidentally turned with that movie, she in that argument, she basically, well, the argument started off with her just screaming, "Do you believe that women are people?" And we were like, well, yeah, I mean, duh. And she'd be like, well, then you are a feminist. And so my friend was like, so I'm guessing that you believe men are people? And she was like, well, yeah, of course. And so he said, well, you're a men's rights activist. And they, her and her little posse were immediately like, oh, no, that's not how it works. Like that doesn't make any sense. And we're just like, literally the same logic. How do you get, I don't understand. It sounds like the same thing.
Well, when you understand psychology a little bit, it actually makes perfect sense, because they want everyone to be like themselves, and the best way to destroy the opposition is to show them that they are more like feminists than they are like men's rights activists. So if I say to you, hey, do you believe women deserve equal rights? Yeah. Okay, you're a feminist then. But use the same logic on them. It's like, no, you misunderstood. It's because you're not properly educated. So you have to come over to our side and we can properly educate you, aka brainwash you.
Oh shit, right. I just realized that I muted myself. My bad.
Well, is there something you wanted to add to that?
No, I actually I finished, but then I couldn't hear you, so I accidentally muted it because I could hear my echo.
Oh, okay. So let's take some comments from the chat before we close today. I thank everyone for coming out. Dean Corwin. So yeah, men bad, women good. That is the feminist narrative. They left out girls because they knew that it would not fit their narrative that violent video games makes boys less empathetic. See, I'd like to know what the girls thought. Did they have less
Me too.
empathy towards women after playing a violent video game? Did girls even play the violent video game? The fact that they didn't
Hmm.
report on girls makes me wonder if maybe they played Half-Life or the 3D pinball game and not Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah. That would be funny.
And unfortunately, Sato
But
Christ, you
I don't
didn't. Go
understand
ahead.
how I don't understand how they use those games, any of those games, compared to Grand Theft Auto, because there are many female protagonist games that don't necessarily that aren't they can be violent and sexual, but they of course they wouldn't put those in there because that would just completely fuck up their narrative.
And yes, unfortunately, Sato Chris, you have arrived near the end. But to be fair, this is like earlier in the morning than I'm used to. So, so Dean goes on to say, so a biased study providing a presupposed narrative that men are violent and women are victim. Yeah, basically. Although I like what Sato Chris said. So, cats are predators of snakes. You hear that, Medusa? We're natural enemies of each other.
Oh yeah, true.
Although I'm a mech and you're a gorgon, so I mean,
Yeah.
I could just step on you and you could turn me to stone. I don't know how that would work.
No. See, what I like. Someone told me this thing, and I think I'm gonna use it. They said, "Old Medusa turns men into stone. Or modern Medusa turns men into bone." So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with that.
Well, I feel a bit of stiffness if you get my drift. Oh God, I'm bad. And good to see you, Super Nerd Land. For those who don't know, I'm now the editor for Super Nerd Land. Not that they really need all that much work. They do great articles, but I'm going to jazz it up a little bit. But definitely check out supernerdland.com for great articles on nerd culture. So I'm going to go ahead and come to a close on this. If you want to check out this review for yourself, go ahead and click on this link here. Modern Medusa's channel. Go ahead and click on that. She's only done one video, but I thought it was a fantastic video. I think she's going to go far. But if you want her to make more than just one video, subscribe to her and convince her that she has to. Guilt her into it. It's like, hey, I subscribed to you. Where's the video? Where's more videos?
I will.
Also, consider donating to my Patreon. My camera should arrive today, or otherwise I would have had the camera on with Medusa today, but I'm sure you'd still would want to see Medusa than my ugly mug. But donate to my Patreon. I can get some medical treatment done. It's going to cost me like thousands and thousands of dollars because insurance won't cover it, but I'm pretty certain it will help me. If you're not comfortable with doing Patreon, which is understandable, consider buying my book. Now, the first book is a free download. There's a section in there where Mercedes Carrera is walking around naked, her ample bosoms just ready to be caressed. So definitely check that out. If you like it, consider leaving a review. And if you really like it, considering buying the book that comes directly after that one. It only costs $2.99, and that helps me out a lot with my career. Also, check out Voice Equality if you think that social media should be adhere to the First Amendment, consider signing up for that. Check out your current wherever your location is. Be sure to sign the petition for that. And is there anything you want to say before we head off today, Vanessa?
I guess just thank you so much for having me. This is my first live stream, and I'm really, really excited to do more. And hopefully, we'll be able to do some more in the future.
Well, I look forward to that. I definitely invite you back anytime you want to be on.
Awesome.
And yeah, definitely check out Modern Medusa's channel if you get the opportunity. She has one really great video where she's literally pulling stuff out of her ass.
Yes, it's a good time.
Anyways, that's going to do it for me. Thank you everyone for coming out. Be sure to hit the subscribe button below, hit the thumbs up so all your friends can know how great of a guy I am. And this is Mad Cat signing out.